So you have the Washington Monument for Abraham Lincoln, and of course this represents, represents the phallus of Osiris, and that's what in ancient Egypt, I guess this is what I was getting to, was before the cult of Osiris took over, it was the cult of Ra that was dominant. Ra is just a plain Jane sun god, really no, in-depth lore, unlike Osiris and Horus. And basically the obelisk represented at that time just the rays of the sun, which is a male phallic. It's the same, like the cross is a sun symbol as well. If you look directly at the sun during the day, it forms a cross in your vision, just from the rays. But the obelisk, they took on a new meaning after the cult of Osiris took over from the cult of Ra. And essentially they repurposed these obelisks, as we'll see will happen with the Roman Empire going forward, but they repurposed the obelisk to now represent the phallus of Osiris. And basically when you have Octavian, like we talked about, he comes, the crowning achievement, what really solidified the Roman Empire was he defeated his main enemy, who was basically sleeping with Cleopatra, who had also Caesar had also been with, and actually conceived a son with. He had Caesarion, who, funny enough, Cleopatra had basically branded Caesarion as Horus. There's sculptures that they had made of the hawk, Horus, and a child standing underneath this hawk, which was Caesarion. So she saw Caesarion, the son of Caesar and Cleopatra, the fusion of Egypt and Rome, to be a Horus figure that would unite the two dynasties. Because at this point, Cleopatra was still basically fulfilling the pharaonic line. But Octavian came in and he kills Caesarion, he kills Cleopatra, and so he ends the pharaonic line, and basically merges the empire completely. Just completely gets rid of this. I guess the estimate is maybe 4,000 years of unbroken pharaonic line, and destroys them. Egypt is still the center of basically education and thinking and learning for a while afterwards, although Caesar, during Caesar's civil war, he did burn down the Library of Alexandria famously, which kind of, it was a big hit to the knowledge of the world at that point. It was kind of its own great reset. Yeah. Because basically any knowledge from before that point in history was effectively destroyed. There was, a lot of it was saved, and it wouldn't be fully destroyed. There was a second library that was destroyed shortly after the Council of Nicaea and the establishment of Christianity as the main religion of Rome. But anyways, yeah, there was a great reset during this time. The Romans end up taking these obelisks, the obelisk sitting in front in Vatican Square. There's an obelisk in the middle, and that now has a cross on the top. So just like the cult of Osiris repurposed the obelisk from being a sun rays to an Osiris phallus, we have the Romans that moved this same obelisk, I believe it was from Heliopolis to Alexandria to Rome, moving through the different centers of power. It's erected in what was originally Nero's circus, which famously Nero persecuted the early Christians and supposedly crucified the first pope, which again, the pope rules by the authority of this killed king. Peter was crucified upside down in Nero's circus. Right. And the obelisk that's still standing in the Vatican today was erected. It's the only obelisk in Rome to never fall, and it is still there. And it was there when Peter was crucified upside down by Nero.
So do you feel like the obelisk in DC is just directly connected to the same idea throughout time? That they're the same entity?
So the Washington Monument is, I believe, I forget if it's meters or feet, whatever the designation is, but it ends up being 666 feet tall, I believe.
Yeah, that's right.
And in Gematria, Nero's name breaks down to 666, which is why people they point to 666 as the number of the beast in Revelation. They point to that. They say, "Oh, that's not like predicting a future thing. He was just talking about Nero." So, anyways, yeah, there's deep connections, and that Washington Monument is obviously a perpetuation of that exact same.
And it should be noted real quick for those who don't know. I believe Nero also famously took a young boy and made it his wife, and made the young boy dress as his dead wife. Do you know that story?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Sounds about right.
Definitely matches. And then, famously ran a false flag where he burns down Rome and blames the Christians.
That's right.
Yeah, he's a great beast character, that's for sure.
That's right. So, and then going back to what you were saying earlier, in terms of the coincidence of all of this, you mentioned that with the Caesar, I think it was on January 7th that they did that to him.
49 BC.
And then same thing with Trump. So, like when I asked Alex earlier if you believe in coincidence, same question to you. Do you believe this is all, when you say predictive programming, this has been set in stone for some time and it's just repeating itself? Is that what I gather?
Yeah, so there's two aspects to it. It's simultaneously chaos and order. I believe it's like Ordo de Chao or something like that. I'm totally mispronouncing the Latin, but it's a free Masonic emblem. Mm-hmm. And it's order out of chaos. Of course, well, it's on the, I believe it's on that emblem. And anyways, that's at the core of basically every question is how much is order, how much is chaos.
Right.
And you could look at astrology for a similar thing. People see these astrological cycles play out, and it's it could be that that people are looking for these astrological events and then performing actions based on that. So, for instance, on January 12th of 2020, I was talking about this astrological event known as Saturn conjunct Pluto in Capricorn at 22 degrees. And it was every astrologist was talking about it as a huge shift. It's basically Saturn represents order, Pluto represents death. It's historically represents a huge shift in the current world order. For instance, the last time that happened was during the Reformation period, where the printing press had just been invented. There was a great decentralization of information. Martin Luther basically created the Protestant movement. Then they translated the Bible out of Latin into the languages of the people. So you had, the main book, the core mythology of that age. You no longer needed a priest to tell you what the stories were. You could read them yourself.
Right.
And so people were looking forward to this event, and then lo and behold, the worst case of it in these states was maybe a week or two after that, January 12th of 2020. So there's both the chaos aspect of just the planets aligning, which is, it's somewhat order, but it's not necessarily, you wouldn't think that would actually affect things. But maybe people were waiting for that event to do certain things, or, it's a mix of both. And I think if there's a couple of ways you can experiment with this kind of quantum physics, famously the two-slit experiment. Mm-hmm. And there's also some pop culture things that have become relevant recently. Have you ever heard of randonauting?
Oh, I did, but I forget why. So it's helped you locate things, I believe.
So essentially you have a bunch of not quantum computers, but as close as you can get currently.
Right.
You have quantum number generators, as random as physically possible, that we can make at this time. You give the program your GPS location and a certain radius around you, and you have the random number generators, as random as we can do, and hundreds of them.
Right.
They all generate numbers based off of your original GPS coordinates, gives you a random GPS location, and you go to that location. And the idea is, because we're implementing as much chaos as physically possible, just the slightest impact that human consciousness has on reality, as seen in the two-slit experiment, which You're familiar with it, right, Chin?
Oh yeah, it was like observable.
Viewing,
what's observable? Yep. Yeah.
Observing reality affects it. The idea is because it's so random, we're creating max randomness, max chaos. Just a slight impact that our consciousness has on reality should impact it and influence the outcome. And there's been some crazy stories, people finding dead bodies at the
Right.
at the points.
That's
And I've had a lot of much nicer, more wholesome experiences doing it. But that's ultimately the answer. Is it's a mix of order and chaos.
It seems like there's people who just know how to hack the chaos too. You know, when or the other thing is, when I'm looking at the Trump assassination stuff, especially the first one, the Butler one, and now this new one, it seems like the people who want to carry out the bad stuff either know how to hack the chaos or use it as a cover, right? It's like the chaos becomes part of the entire plan, either for their cover or to throw everybody off what's really going on.
Yeah, I mean, there is a certain level of, this mix of order and chaos. There is a certain level of, cycles will repeat. Cycles are a natural thing in reality. We have seasons, we have multi-year, climate cycles as well. And you can, at some level you can influence them or whatever, on a local level, but there's an inevitability aspect to this. So, when we're talking about the connections between Caesar and Trump in astrology, you have the yearly cycle. So, each month, Aquarius, it's kind of based off the moon cycle, months, moon. So you have it on a yearly basis, within the year, but then you also have what's called the precession of the equinox, which is basically there's Plato's great year, which is essentially roughly 25,000 years, 26,000 years between that, where you have the equinox precesses through different constellations. So we had, when Caesar took power, it was precessing through the age of Aries to the age of Pisces. And Pisces, the fish, which again, we were talking about the fish earlier, and it's a symbol of Christianity as well. And then now we're going from, because it's been roughly 2,100 years, we're going from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius, and we're seeing these essentially to the date same cycles occurring, where Trump is voted out of power on the exact same day as Caesar, 2,070 years later. So there's an inevitability to it, but there's also, people are obviously influencing it in some ways. There are people making conscious decisions, whether or not they're doing it based off of the astrology.
Right.
It's like a chicken or the egg situation.
Right.
It's a paradox.
Do you think there's some cosmic force pushing these people to it, or is it that the people doing these things they like the symmetry of, carrying out these acts when certain things are aligned?
Undoubtedly. And, the people at the top are much more conscious of it. Those that are, gained the knowledge that's been passed down in these secret societies and these private education systems since Egypt had a priest class, and that same information has been kept private. They're not going to teach you that at a public college. It's been kept private for so long. So there are people who understand everything that's going on and are positioning themselves to, fulfill certain things. But, it really gets to the core question of free will. And the answer is nobody knows.
Of course.
Right. So where does this all go anyway?
It's an illusion, and it's impossible to know. I believe there's free will, but I also believe God knows everything that's going down, but I also think there's a billion different ways for everything to go down. So when it comes to the killing of the king you were talking about earlier, and then connecting that to what's going on with Trump now, they haven't done that yet. Like that hasn't happened, right? It seems like they're trying to. So what do you make of the failed attempts, or what's to come then? What's the goal?
So this is
skip forward the chapters a little bit here.
What's that?
I'm just saying, skip forward the chapters of the Greek mythology, just like.
I've only covered 2,000 years of seemingly unconnected events in 15 minutes, but so
Doing great.
hopefully the audience is hanging in there, but yeah, I think it's. What was your last question there?
When it comes to like the killing of the king narrative that you were saying, they haven't done that with Trump. It hasn't been successful yet. What is your take on that then? What is the take on the failed attempts, alleged attempts, and then what comes after that?
So it's just not time yet. I would predict, I'm fairly certain they are going to succeed eventually. Hopefully not. But he has to win the Civil War first in terms of the narrative that play out. They had a Roman Civil War that ended the Republic and basically gave rise to the Empire. So, we haven't had that yet. And I think, we're getting so close now. It's, we're going to see some, increasingly crazy shit happen.
So can you explain like what you think that might be? Like, what does that look like? Is that hot war? Is that a more local country, nationwide civil war? Is that a more global thing? Because it seems like, we got stories just the other day about about Biden saying to Zelensky, you can use our Western missiles to launch into Russia. Putin saying that's World War III. It's like, what are we anticipating? What do you anticipate?
You don't want to be surprised?
So domestically, the as far as the predictive programming, I think the most accurate and most prominent and effective that we've already seen play out is the Purge movies, which Jared Kushner just happened to hire the PR guy from the Purge movies onto the White House staff. The Purge movie started in 2013.
I didn't know that. What?
Right around the time that BLM started.
Wow.
And what's the Purge movies about? It's about very select times where there's complete lawlessness. You can get away with anything. You can loot. You can rob. And it's extra effective if you wear a mask and completely dissociate yourself from your individual ego and completely submit to a mob psychology, which we saw 100% during COVID.
Wow.
And that's 7 years of programming there. Not to mention they had a specific 2016 Purge election year movie where they showed the Trump character trying to kill the Hillary character who wins.
That's right, man.
Which actually this is the interesting part about predictive programming is that they give you fear porn scenarios. And then they kind of flip it to get a maximum emotional reaction, because when people think that the timeline isn't right, when things go how people expect, they're fine. Like, for instance, 9/11, everybody had been programmed to know that the Twin Towers were going to be destroyed in a terrorist attack from a million different angles. So when it happened,
from movies,
they weren't necessarily questioning what's wrong. They were, okay, well, it happened, and, we're just going to go to war with the bad guys, just like I saw in various, in the fucking Super Mario movie.